Happy Halloween to all of our Over My Dead Pod listeners, and welcome to our very first Halloween special. Woo! Woo woo. I'm gonna host today's little special. I'm Kylie Caldwell,
This is Kate Carter.
And I'm Holly Spear.
and we're gonna share some scary stories with you. We all have some stories. We even have a little special guest. And I say we just jump right into our first story, as told by Kate. Take it away.
All right, everybody. So if you're listening to this story on one of our platforms like Spotify or Apple, go ahead and stop what you're doing and head to our YouTube page, because this special, we're actually doing a full video of us recording together. We're all on Zoom. This is going to be a non-edited, no cuts, just straight up us talking through our stories. So on account of everyone, I'm going to go ahead and apologize for all the mistakes we're probably going to make, but it's going to be fun and I hope you enjoy it. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into my story. So I am not going to tell you the name of it. You don't really know yet, but here we go. So Lisa Ann French was born on June 2nd, 1964 in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Historically, this town, Fond du Lac, has been named one of the top 20 safetiest cities in the US. But as of 3 years ago in 2020, it was rated 138th just in Wisconsin. So obviously a lot of safety things have changed since the 1960s. But in the early 1970s, it was basically like any other Midwestern small town in America. It looked like one of those movies, especially during the holidays. Everything's in walking distance, every house has decor put up, etc. So Lisa French lived at 192 Armory Street in Northeast Wisconsin with her mother, Mary Ann, and her stepfather, Bruce. And then she had a baby brother named Michael. Lisa's French actual father is named Alan, and he owned a duplex in the neighborhood, so he lived close by and saw her often. So everything was really good in the French family, no bad blood between the couples. And on Halloween night of 1973, Lisa was just 9 years old, and she was a fourth grader at a school called Chegwin Elementary School. Lisa was this really cute little girl. She had brown hair. She had this shaggy brown haircut, a really friendly smile. And at the time when she was 9 years old, she was missing a few of her front teeth. So she was super cute. Her mom, Mary Ann, worked at a local hair salon. So Lisa often had the latest and cutest haircuts. Now, Lisa's best friend was named Ann Parker. And Ann would describe Lisa as this fun, bubbly, outgoing girl. And on that Halloween night in 1973, Armory Street was lit up. Almost every house on the block had decorations. All the porch lights were on, ready for trick-or-treaters. And one block over on a street called East Bank, a group of parents were hosting this block party called the Pumpkin Place. And around this time in the 1970s, there were a lot of cases of Halloween candy poisonings that were going through America, which still to this day kind of scares me. And razors and candy apples, or razors put in the candy. And it was something that a lot of parents had to keep an eye out for in their children's candy. So this was one of the reasons that the neighborhood parents created this annual Pumpkin Place block party get together. It was a safe place that all of their kids could go out in the neighborhood and go trick-or-treating, and the parents could really monitor what was given out.
Wait, I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did your guys' parents ever go in and check all of your candy before you could eat it when you
100%.
got?
Yes.
Mine did. Yeah.
No.
100%.
No,
I thought
Ollie.
that was a huge myth, of people putting stuff in candy.
It is, but my parents still,
I don't think mine always went through it, but I mean, they never found anything, but it 100% not a myth.
Oh.
People used to put razors in candy, or I mean, that was kind of back then. I would say more so right now. It's drugs being put in candy. Some kids OD.
That doesn't make sense to me. Who's giving away free drugs?
Right. Yeah. And also you don't know, you don't get to see the aftermath. So what's the point of drugging the kid? I mean, that sounds horrible, but you get what I'm saying? Yeah, why would you? It's a lot of money being spent for no reason,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Holly, not a myth. real thing. And we're in the 70s, remember, and we don't trust a lot of the 70s. So
Yes.
so Lisa and her friend Anne, both 9 years old, had planned to go out to the pumpkin place together, and they were going to meet another friend there as well. But that night, Anne got in trouble with her parents and she was grounded, so she wasn't allowed to go out for Halloween, which totally sucks. So this left Lisa alone for the night, and she decided she still wanted to go to the pumpkin place, and her parents decided that she would be allowed to go and actually let her trick or treat at some of the houses in the neighborhood on the way there, as long as it was houses of people she knew. So Lisa was really excited to go out and trick or treat, and this was the first year her parents were going to let her do it by herself. I would say 9 is a little young, in my opinion, to go out by yourself, but you're in a neighborhood that you know everyone. There wasn't anything like scary, crazy ahead of time, and she was going to a place with a lot of parents. So like, I get where her family comes from. This was also a long time ago. I think nowadays, I don't know if 9-year-olds go out by themselves. I feel like there's probably parents like watching from the corner or something.
I feel like I'd feel comfortable with that if I knew all the parents and it was just like
Yeah.
maybe right down the road or something.
Right.
But yeah,
And, like
9.
somebody's going to be watching her, you know?
Yeah.
So that night, Lisa raced through the dinner. She wasn't able to contain her excitement. And this year she was dressing up as a butterfly, but it ended up being too cold outside. So her mom did like a last minute costume and Lisa went as a hobo instead, which I love. Big change of costume. So Lisa's mom bundled her up in a green parka with masking tape covering some like holes in her jeans. She had a floppy hat. And then a final touch was they painted these cute like little freckles on her face. So Lisa left their house around 6 p.m. and she had a 7 p.m. curfew. So like to me, that makes it a lot better. Like she was only going to be out for an hour, you know, like we're good. We're there before, you know, it gets dark at night or maybe a little bit dark. But Lisa knew 3 houses in the neighborhood that she was going to before going to the pumpkin place. So the first one belonged to a teacher. The second one was a house across the street where one of her classmates lived. And then the third one was a home of a man named Gerald Miles Turner Jr. So Gerald at this time was in his mid-20s and he worked as a machinist for the local railroad. He was divorced but had 2 kids. And a few months before Halloween, he had actually rented out that other half of the duplex in the neighborhood that's owned by Lisa's dad. So him and his girlfriend, her name's Arlene, they had recently moved into the house nearby with their new baby, and Lisa and her family really liked Gerald. Like he was young, cool. She would often visit him and his girlfriend to like talk, play on the porch with the baby, and she would even take the baby on walks in a stroller, which is adorable. And so he was considered a family friend of the Frenches, and Lisa had no reason to be afraid of him. What Lisa and her parents didn't know at the time is that apparently a year before Halloween this year, he had been charged with statutory rape of a 15-year-old babysitter, but apparently the charges were dropped. Nothing really came from it, and he was never punished or convicted. So, as far as we know, Lisa left her house around 6 p.m. to go visit the 3 houses in her neighborhood, but by 7 p.m., when her curfew had set in place, Lisa never showed up back home. And for a little while, her mother, Marianne, was like, it's fine, she's just running behind. But around 7:30, Marianne began to worry, and she decided to call the police shortly after because she knew something wasn't right. And unfortunately, by 10 p.m., a search was underway for Lisa. The local PTA was also really well organized and included a lot of parents in the neighborhood, and they had a program called Block Parents. And the leader, Betty, started calling parents in the neighborhoods immediately to like tell them about Lisa being missing and asking questions. And that night, about 50 families were contacted about Lisa's disappearance, and they all sprang into action immediately. Everybody turned on their porch lights. People were putting signs up that like gave information about Lisa. And it turns out about 5,000 people ended up volunteering that night to help look for her.
Wow.
But which I'm like, I don't even know if I don't even know 5 people, you know, nearby. Like that's a lot of people. But she was nowhere to be found. And again, this is a really small town. So basically it sounds like the whole town was like Halloween night, little girl missing, let's spring into action. Eventually the search widened their parameters and police ended up dragging the local rivers and lakes because, as we all know, unfortunately, after a certain point that someone goes missing, the method for like the search changes, and they start considering like, if the person's deceased, where would you look? Like, where would a body be dumped? And a local photo shop printed about 6,000 posters of Lisa's school picture and description on it. And they started posting these all throughout town and outside of town. And even, this is like my favorite part, a local gas station offered anyone helping with the search of Lisa 25 gallons of free gas to like go out and search. And I know like gas wasn't that expensive back then, but like, could you imagine if gas stations did that now? Like I'm like 25 gallons. My car doesn't fit that, but that's a lot, you know. That's
a very creative idea.
It's genius. I mean,
Yeah.
If they were doing that now, we'd find a lot more people.
Absolutely. I'd be out all the time. I'd be like, fill my baby up. We're going to go look for the little kid, you know? So that Saturday morning, which was November 3rd, 3 days after Halloween, a farmer named Gerald Braun, not related to the Gerald I mentioned earlier, was riding his tractor on his property in the town of Taycheedah, which is about 4 miles outside of Fond du Lac. And he was in this wooded area off of Highway 49 when he spotted 2 trash bags that looked like they had been tossed from the road. So he went over to the trash bags. They weren't supposed to be there. And he opened up these trash bags. And inside one of them was Lisa's clothes, the costume, and a bag of candy. And then inside the other trash bag was Lisa's battered, naked body. After finding this, the farmer called the police, but somehow, small community, people in the community got there before the police did. And there was even like a quote in a newspaper that this local reverend had climbed a barbed wire fence, cutting his hands in order to get to Lisa's body. And when he knelt down next to her to pray, he was crying with grief as the police like showed up behind him. And more people just kept arriving, and no one can contain their emotions. It was just a really sad scene. I mean, you can imagine, small town, everybody for 3 days was searching for this little girl, and then a horrific scene found in some trash bags like right outside of town. Really, really sad. So the authorities soon arrived to remove Lisa's body, and this included a sheriff, a deputy, the head of state crime lab, field team, and a special investigator for the district attorney's office. Lisa's funeral ended up being held at the local Lutheran church on November 6, 1973, and the whole community came out to support Lisa's family. It was so packed in this church that there wasn't even standing room inside anymore. Like, people were just outside the church surrounding it. So Lisa was only 9 years old at the time of her death. Lisa's mom, Mary Ann, chose a white casket for Lisa and dressed her in the same dress that she wore for picture day, which is like so cute. And since Mary Ann was a hairstylist, she did Lisa's hair herself, just like she did every morning before school. And the day after the funeral, Mary Ann actually found a note tucked in Lisa's Bible in her bedroom at home. And Lisa had been writing these like uplifting like messages, like saying like, smile, God loves you. If you ask Jesus to take over, you'll begin a whole new life, and stuff like that. And it was really cute little words. And Mary Ann treasured this note, believing it was like a way to show how like kind Lisa was for such a young age. Soon after Lisa's body was found, police started questioning witnesses. They talked to everyone in the neighborhood and pieced together the houses that Lisa had stopped at the night of Halloween. The day after Lisa disappeared, they went and questioned one of the neighbors, Gerald Turner. They were suspicious of him and thought that he could possibly be involved, but they didn't have any evidence. So for months, police kept going back to Gerald, questioning him, just thinking like something is red flagging on their radar, like thinking he might be involved. And at some point when they were talking to him, Gerald's story started to change a little bit. So his details weren't consistent. And of course, the police asked for him to take a polygraph test, which we don't even need to talk about. You know my thoughts, you know my feelings, don't do it. At first, Gerald refused to do it, which kudos to him, even though different situation. But around mid-1974, he ended up agreeing to take it. And the results came back as inconclusive, which is never a good sign. But that gave the polygraph itself, because they were able to ask him some more questions, it gave the police more information to work with. They knew that his house was the last one that Lisa had stopped on Halloween. So there's a really good chance he was the last person to see her alive. And after 9 months of questioning, Gerald finally confessed. He was arrested on August 9th, 1974, and charged with first-degree murder. That exact same month, Lisa's mom ended up giving birth to her third child, which was kind of a blessing for the family. It was, a tragedy followed by a blessing kind of thing. I can't imagine going through any of that. But with her toddler and a newborn, Marianne spent the next year going to court and testifying for her deceased daughter. Now, little trigger warning, but the details of Gerald's confession are pretty horrific, just to warn you guys. So, according to Gerald, his account of Halloween 1973 went a little something like this. He told police that his girlfriend, Arlene, had took their baby to the pumpkin place without him, and while she was gone, Lisa came by the house. The door was open, and so Lisa looked around the corner to see if anybody was home, and when she saw Gerald, he said her face lit up. And at that point, he felt very sexually motivated to attack her. But he said that he didn't want to kill her and had no plans of doing so. So, which, like, whatever. We don't care at this point.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that detail. So Gerald then took Lisa to his bedroom, stripped off her clothes, and he raped her. And apparently this rape was a really violent attack, because at one point he noticed that Lisa was no longer breathing. So according to Gerald, he tried to do CPR, but she was already gone. So Gerald heard his girlfriend Arlene get home around 7:30. He put socks over his hands to avoid leaving fingerprints, and he moved Lisa's body to the bathtub in his house, which I'm like, your fingerprints are probably everywhere anyways, amongst other things. And Arlene found Gerald sitting in their living room couch in a robe. And at that moment, Arlene was like, we're supposed to go to my mom's house for Halloween. But when she got back, Gerald told her that he wasn't feeling well and encouraged her to go without him. So Arlene left the house briefly, but then remembered her mom wasn't going to be home till a certain time. Like, there was just timing issues were off. So she came back inside. And while Arlene was in the house waiting to leave again, she said that Gerald just kept going in and out of the bedroom, and he was doing it like really weirdly. He was acting strange, but to her at the time, she didn't think anything of it, because she obviously didn't know anything had happened. And after a little while, she ended up leaving again with the baby, and Gerald went right back to work. He said that he was trying to cover up his crime. He wasn't really sure if Lisa was quite dead all the way, but he shoved her body into a garbage bag anyways. He wiped off Lisa's shoes and clothes to get rid of fingerprints, and shoved all of her belongings into another garbage bag. And that's when Gerald said that he drove a few miles out of town and dumped both the bags in the field. So Gerald's confession wasn't the only evidence that investigators had, because they also found hair that matched his inside the garbage bags and on Lisa's body. So he wouldn't have gotten, away with it with just his confession anyways. But when the medical examiners, and this is really sad, but when the medical examiner's report came back for Lisa's body, it said that her cause of death was asphyxiation following a heart attack. So it wasn't that she was smothered or strangled. She actually had died of shock at the physical and emotional trauma of being raped.
Yikes.
Which is, when I read that, I was doing research, and when I read that, because I was like, what? Okay, so she died of a heart attack, asphyxiation, but then it literally in the medical report says like she basically died from anxiety. Like, she had shock because of what was happening and had a heart attack and died. Which is like horrible. But because this nature of this crime, and it's like obviously a really cute kid and she's young, the news took this story and spread it throughout all of Wisconsin, and it hit headlines all over the country as well. And of course, media loves to give nicknames to awful events and killers and stuff. So Gerald Turner became the Halloween killer. Gerald's case went to trial, and during the trial, he ended up recanting his confession, of course. And he said that police had been harassing him for months, and he wrote the confession just to get them to shut up. But multiple women during the trial testified that Gerald was abusive and had raped them as well, including that 15-year-old babysitter, and as well as two of his ex-partners. So at this point, we know he's like a serial rapist and a horrible person. Robert Owens was a psychologist that had met with Gerald while he was in prison. And Robert testified in court that Gerald had a cold disregard for people, but especially for women, and that Gerald had no conscious control over his impulse for pleasure and had no ability to conform to society's expectations around sexual violence. But the doctor who performed Lisa's autopsy also testified and explained that Lisa had died by death by shock, which, to sum it up, basically the trauma that Lisa had endured during this attack caused her heart to stop. And it was just that her body shut down after that. So the heart attack didn't stop the blood circulation. Oxygen wasn't being like circulated. And it caused an asphyxiation. So the doctor said that Lisa did die immediately after the attack, or even during it at some point. So I don't know, pros and cons of a horrible situation. But with all the evidence and witness testimony against him, the jury did find Gerald Turner guilty of second-degree murder, as well as enticing a child for moral purposes, indecent behavior with a child, and sexual perversion. But the jury rejected the first-degree murder charge, though, because that meant, well, let me take that back. So when they rejected the first-degree murder charge, that meant Gerald wasn't going to get a full life sentence. Because as we know, with first-degree murder, you have to have like the premeditation that comes with it. And at this moment, we just have the story of Gerald saying like, I was attacking her, I wasn't going to kill her, and Lisa literally did die from a heart attack. So Gerald was sentenced to 38 years and 6 months in prison, and he started serving his prison time on February 3rd, 1975. And during his sentencing, the judge stressed that like Gerald showed no regret, no remorse for his actions. And Marianne was at the trial, and she still remembers that Gerald turned around to her at some point and said, I didn't mean to do it, which like, I don't give a shit. Like,
Don't talk to me. Yeah.
Like what?
Don't talk to me.
Disgusting. So Fond du Lac, Wisconsin changed really, really badly after this event, especially during Halloween. It ended up becoming a daytime holiday. No one was allowed to go out at night. Cities across Wisconsin started to follow this rule as well. And there was even some laws passed about like the days and hours that kids could go outside during Halloween just for safety purposes. So in the late 70s, Gerald started working for the prison's kitchen dock, and he would receive like shipments, unload food and other supplies. And he really kept his head down, didn't talk to other inmates. And in prison, people like Gerald, this is still true to this day, are called baby rapers, which is not good. That's like one of the worst categories you could be while in prison. And everyone hates you. And if Gerald even looked at other prisoners, he would be attacked. Which, we're fine with, but even, like boohoo. So even though he was playing it safe under the radar in prison, doesn't mean that he wasn't still a violent and dangerous person. And records in his prison profile showed that at some point he was like waiting for an appointment with the prison dentist, but instead he didn't want to wait. So he just like pulled out his own teeth. Can't imagine. That just makes my jaw hurt. But there was even an educational director at the prison who's like in charge of like all the mail and books and magazines that like come into the prisoners. And one day an envelope came in for Gerald that he had like bought for himself. And it was a magazine from another country, and it was filled with like this like hardcore sexual bondage. And the director didn't approve for Gerald to see this. And Gerald had received a written explanation for like why it wasn't approved, but Gerald didn't take this well. And so he decided to sue the director and the prison's warden, which I didn't even know you could do while you were in prison. But get this, a year and a half later, a judge ruled in Gerald's favor and ordered that he be allowed to have the magazine.
Yeah, I'm also confused as to how you order magazines while you're in prison.
Yeah.
Just like the food catalog, I don't know how he got away with it, but like, and then he sues them for not being able to have it and wins. I don't get it at
Yeah.
all. So
No.
at some point while he was in prison, Gerald wrote a letter that was addressed to Lisa. And this wasn't released until 1999, so we didn't have it like during this time frame and stuff. But the letter was basically a confession. And the letter said, quote unquote, "I doubt I could ever fully realize the terror you experienced at my hands. I still see you standing there in the doorway with that beaming hat, having recognized me. I see the delight in your eyes turn to fear as I close the door behind you. And for the rest of my life, I will have to live with what I did to you. On that night, I became a monster." After serving 17 years
What?
and 18 months of his sentence, Gerald was released on parole for good behavior.
Oh.
But
Okay.
just keep it with the story because it gets better for us. Trust me. So Gerald was released in 1992, and after 17 years, and the people of Wisconsin were like pissed off. They organized multiple protests about it, and because he was paroled, Wisconsin created a sexual predator law known as Turner's Law, and this allows them to send a convicted sex offender to a mental institution after they're paroled if they believe the person is still a danger to society, which, like, thank you, great law, let's put it in
Also,
effect.
weird. You're like, okay, they're good enough to get out on parole, but now we're going to go to the mental institution?
Now we're gonna make this law that is named after Jared Turner
Yeah.
for him. Yeah.
I don't know if that's entirely ethical, but I'm okay with it in this case.
Yes,
Yeah.
it makes no sense. Yeah, because like I don't feel bad for him, but like you're kind of like he got screwed by a law telling him like now he's gonna go to a mental institution. So anyways, so Gerald was sent to a halfway house in Milwaukee, and he moved into his own apartment eventually, and Lisa's family and many people in the community were devastated that this killer was free, especially only after 17 years. So the people of Fond du Lac came together and they filed a lawsuit. They said that Gerald's release date had been miscalculated by the state. And then at some point, the state admitted that there was a mistake. And Gerald, which I don't get this, they were like, oopsies. Gerald was sent back to prison in 1993 by the Wisconsin Court of Appeals. But then their decision was reversed by the state Supreme Court a year later in 1994. And he was released from prison again. So this dude's just like bouncing back and forth. Yeah, I don't know. I love Wisconsin, but like maybe in the 70s, I don't know what was going on, or 90s at this point. So under Turner's Law, which was eventually created because he had been paroled early, Gerald was sent to a psychiatric hospital, and the Department of Justice could keep him there as long as they provided that he was a sexually violent person that shouldn't be released to the public and would most likely reoffend. So in 1998, Gerald went on trial to determine if he should be stayed locked up in the hospital, or be released on parole. During this trial, 4 women testified that he had violently raped them, including that 15-year-old babysitter, both of his ex-partners, and his ex-wives. So a psychiatrist testified on Gerald's behalf, though, and this is a great number, so listen to this. So a psychiatrist testified on Gerald's behalf, saying that there was a 20% chance that Gerald would commit another violent crime within the next 7 years. And I'm like, I read that and I was like, wait a minute. Is that a benefit for Gerald by the psychiatrist saying this? How do you calculate that?
How do you measure that? Yeah.
20% chance he would commit another violent sexual crime in the next 7 years.
I would like to get that for like 5%.
No chance. There shouldn't be a chance.
Yeah.
If there's any percentage, back to jail.
Back to straight to jail.
Straight to jail. So at some point they even gave Gerald medication to like lower his sex drive and help him resist his like sexual urges, which basically proved he would reoffend because the medication didn't do anything. So like,
what is this medication? What?
I would love to know what it had no name of medication, but it was like, it's going to help him lower sex drive and he's not going to be like a rapist, but that's not how that works. Like, you can't. So despite the testimonies and evidence that was presented, the jury ruled that the state did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Gerald was likely to reoffend and commit another sexual crime. So he was released on parole once again, and this time he was sent to a foster halfway house in Madison. And
Also, just like back to the medication thing, can you imagine just being like all these murderers out on the loose? It's like, but they're on like
they're on meds.
on their meds. Like,
yeah.
okay.
They're on Adderall. They're fine. They're not gonna. they're so Adderalled up right now. Like, they're not gonna kill anybody. It's
yeah,
like
they're on their meds.
The opposite. Yeah. So he's sent to this foster like halfway house, and the condition of his parole is that he had to like wear an electronic monitor, and he was only allowed to leave the house if he was supervised while doing so. He also was not allowed to be in contact with any children, and he was not allowed to possess any pornography. So once again, the community was outraged that Gerald was out and about. And apparently Gerald was like, I love this part too. He was like pissed off with how much attention his case got. And he despised being called the Halloween killer. And he said, literally, quote unquote, that if he had murdered Lisa any other day than Halloween, no one would have given a damn.
I feel like that might be a little true. They would give a damn. I definitely wouldn't get that much attention.
I mean, he wouldn't be called the Halloween killer, but like, he literally said, like, someone quoted him saying, like, oh, if I had murdered Lisa any other day, nobody would give a damn. But you're like, that's besides the point, Gerald. Like,
yeah,
that's not what you're supposed to say, you know?
Yeah,
like,
then they just call you a just normal
the killer.
Yeah.
The Fond du Lac killer, you know, or something.
Rapist.
Yeah. So
better.
Child rapist Gerald Turner, you know, like, that's what he should be known for. Anyway, so in June of 1998, Gerald was working in the kitchen at that halfway house that he was living at, and he apparently threatened a caseworker with a butcher knife, which is, you know, great. So state prison officials tried to revoke his parole, but for some reason, a state division of appeals was like, we'll let this one go. Like, he's fine. So time after time, this justice system just let this like violent kid rapist killer like go free. It just blows my mind.
I hate this place.
Yeah, love Wisconsin, but like, what was going on? Right, I don't understand. So at some point, as they all do, Gerald tried to find work outside of the halfway house, and he ended up applying to more than 100 companies, and he even applied to government agencies, which not the smartest idea.
Is he allowed to do that?
Yeah, I think that's not a law, like, not a rule now, you know, like, you can't apply to government agencies if you're a child rapist or murderer. So
I don't think any felon can. Yeah.
No, but the good thing is he was turned down by every single job. And at some point he applied for Waste Management of Madison, Wisconsin, and they of course refused to hire him. So his caseworker advised him to sue for discrimination. So apparently, didn't know this, Wisconsin's one of the several states in America where employers are not allowed to consider prior convictions when it comes to applications. I don't even
outside of like even taking into account like rape. That's insane.
And murder
of
a child. So in the summer of 1999, Gerald filed a complaint with the state, and he filed it against the Waste Management of Madison, and he claimed that they refused to hire him because he had a criminal record. But Waste Management claimed that they didn't hire him because of that, but that they didn't hire him because it would violate Gerald's parole. The job that he applied for it involved like him being around dangerous materials, and also kids were brought to the facility for tours all the time. So like it would go against his parole. But who knows why, Gerald was granted a hearing for this case. And so the Waste Management decided to settle the case out of court for an undisclosed amount of money.
Fuck this guy. He just
like he's winning for being a horrible
annoying.
person. Like, it's very, yes. So now we're going to 2003. So 2003, Gerald was living in a foster community correctional house in a place called Dayton County, which is still in Wisconsin. And during a routine checkup, his parole officer found that like he had porn in different places all over the house. He had images and videos on his computer. He had magazines, and they were like stuffed all over the place. So he was obviously in violation of his parole. He had not changed at all. He just was getting away with it. So while living at the halfway house, Gerald also had tried to unlock the Playboy channel on the TV, you know, like when you go late night and you have to like find the subscription and try to pay for it. And he also tried to rent movies about serial killers 3 separate times. So based on these parole violations, he was sent back to prison, and he eventually was sentenced to 15 more years.
Thank God.
So his new release date was February 1st, 2018. And Lisa's family was relieved that this guy was like back in prison, but as his date for release got closer, Lisa's mom, Marianne, decided to take more action. So in October of 2017, she started a petition to get Gerald locked up under his own law, the Turner's Law. She believed that it would be just a matter of time that Gerald would be released and offend again, which,
Obviously.
Yes. So the Wisconsin Department of Justice also tried to keep Gerald locked up using Turner's Law, which would again send him to a mental facility once he was released from prison. They argued that he was heavily supervised, constantly monitored, and Gerald still got away with breaking all of the conditions of his parole. So the halfway house didn't help or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But for him to be qualified to be permanently institutionalized under Turner's Law, the state has to prove that his mental disorders predispose him to commit violent sexual acts. So in 2018, Gerald was released again, but this time he was sent to a treatment center, and the center was run by the Department of Health Services. And Gerald's lawyers argued that they should get the case transferred to a different county. And his lawyers believed that he couldn't get a fair trial in Fond du Lac, which makes sense, but still anyways. So in April of 2018, a judge decided to move the case, and then an appeals judge decided to reverse that decision and ruled that the case was going to stay in that same county. So here we are, October of 2023. The Wisconsin state's effort to keep the Halloween killer in custody was allowed to continue per a judge ruling. So Gerald's attorney filed a motion to dismiss this whole case for him being in the mental institution, and they argued that his constitutional rights had been violated and that the state hadn't offered sufficient evidence to prove that Gerald was mentally insane for his sexual acts. So he was still deemed a sexual predator, but they're trying to get him out of the institution and out into back the real world. A jury trial has been scheduled for next spring to determine whether Gerald should be released or remain in custody. Following a hearing at the beginning of this month, they said that a 4-day jury trial was going to begin on April 16th, 2024. Gerald Turner is currently 73 years old and has been confined at a secure mental health facility in Wisconsin since his prison release date in 2018. So we won't know anything more until April of next year. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Gerald Turner, the Halloween killer.
So what are y'all doing in April? Do you want to just take a little trip?
Boo-boo-boo. Let's get some media passes.
Yeah.
I feel like
torches
I was gonna say this is the one where we boycott and throw tomatoes at him and just horrible person. I
We
mean,
would definitely be kicked out of the courtroom for this one.
Yes. Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, he's 73 now, so he committed the crime when he was in his 20s, so he has been in for a long time, but he has
in and out and
proved-
with a free place to live and HBO.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
What?
And he's broken all of his parole, so it doesn't matter. He's a horrible person. He did something awful. He has not learned. He still has issues. They made a law about him, and they can't get him to stay in prison.
Ridiculous.
Happy Halloween.
Hated that story.
Yeah, I know. I know it's supposed to be like scary and shit, but you really went for it, Kate.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, there was a lot of stories I could have done, and then I just got pissed off. So I was like, you know what? This is a good one.
Yeah, now we're
I
all
like it.
pissed off. Thank
Now
you.
we're all pissed off. So welcome to our podcast. Anyways, that's my story for today.
Great, great. I'm gonna take over something a little different. We're gonna get into it a bit later about another haunted lighthouse me and our special guest have a little personal experience with, but I want to share an even spookier one. So this is the story of the New London Ledge Lighthouse and a subsequent missing persons case. So for those listening instead of watching, which I do not recommend, this lighthouse is a little bit different than what you imagine. It's actually like it's on like a square barge, like out in the water, and it just looks like a colonial 3-story home on top of the barge. So it's not like the long skinny pole on the beach. So it's only 58 feet tall. So the lighthouse began operation in 1909 and it had keepers up until 1939 when the US Coast Guard took over. And of course, by 1987, the light was automated. So another example of technology getting rid of jobs for the working class.
Yay.
Anyways, enough about the history. So visitors and keepers to the lighthouse have reported all sorts of strange things happening. So these include doors opening and closing on their own, random knocks, objects flying across the room, electronics turning on and off, and of course the foghorn going off without explanation. At one point, the Coast Guard officer Randy Watkins reported that one night when he was there by himself, he heard someone calling his name from upstairs.
Red flags.
Already. Some people have even reported seeing the ghost of a tall, bearded man in a raincoat and rain hat. But this ghost would polish brass and clean the windows. So kind of like, the ghost in Kate's story was helping out.
Yeah, a good ghost.
Good ghost. But the odd thing is, only women could see this ghost.
A good sexual ghost.
He might have a little sexual trouble. We'll get into.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know who, someone named the ghost Ernie. He just goes by Ernie. But people have done some research and they think his name was actually John Randolph. But I'm just going to keep calling him Ernie. Okay. So Ernie was a keeper of the lighthouse sometime in the 1920s or 30s up until his death. So while he was working at the lighthouse all by himself, he became so distraught because his wife had left him for a local ferry captain. Ernie had jumped from the top to his death, and his body was never found. So
that'll do.
Likely in the water.
Yeah.
But when the Coast Guard left the lighthouse, an officer wrote the following little note, leaving it behind. It said, quote, "Rock of slow torture, Ernie's domain, hell on earth. May New London Ledge's lighthouse shine on forever because I'm through. I'll watch it afar from drinking a brew." End quote. A little rhyme, a little poem.
A little poem. About hell.
Hell on a rock.
And beer. Okay.
And beer, of course. So this lighthouse has become a bit of a tourist attraction, of course. You can go actually do tours and stuff on it. And it's kind of a thing for kids to just take a little boat and go out there by themselves in the middle of the night for a spooky time. So this is what 21-year-old Sophia McKenna and her 20-year-old friend Spencer Mugford did on May 26, 2018. So Sophia and Spencer, they were exes at one point. I'm not exactly sure when they dated, but they remained friends, and at this time, Sophia had gotten back together with a different ex. Little context. So in the middle of the night on the May 26th, the two parked Sophia's car at the UConn Avery Point campus, and this is weird to me, being in the South, used one of the university's sailboats to go to the lighthouse.
Okay.
I don't know if you can just borrow a sailboat from your school.
Didn't think that was think that was a thing.
So while out on the water, Sophia used Spencer's phone to post a video to his Snapchat. And you can see Spencer paddling and Sophia panning the camera like back to the shore, like kind of around. They'll find out later, but Sophia had left her phone in her car at campus. So it was just Spencer with the only one with the phone. At 2 a.m., Spencer posted a photo on his Snapchat of Sophia posing in front of the no trespassing sign with her tongue out. This was the last time Sophia was seen again.
Mm.
Yeah. By Sunday afternoon, people began to get concerned as they hadn't heard from the two. Apparently, there was some sort of event they needed to go to. And Sophia's mom, Michelle, had checked her phone and found some odd missed calls. Michelle had 7 missed calls at 2:05 a.m., 2:06, 2:07, 3 calls at 2:08, and at 2:09 from an unknown number. Michelle called the number and realized it was Spencer's number, which she didn't have, and Spencer most likely did not have her number saved, so it was believed it was Sophia making the calls on Spencer's phone. The Coast Guard soon went out to the lighthouse, and they found Spencer's shirt tied to the base of it. It was of their opinion that the shirt was used to tie the boat up, and there were no signs of the two at the lighthouse or any nearby water. Almost 48 hours went by, and the sailboat actually washed ashore in Long Island. There was nothing belonging to the two on the boat. 2.5 weeks went by without any clues until Spencer's body was found floating in the water 2.5 miles away from the lighthouse. It was determined Spencer had drowned. So Sophia's body has never been found. Yeah. So the investigation has led to the belief that sometime between 2, when the Snapchat photo was posted, and 2:05, when the phone calls were made, the boat likely slipped out of the shirt and went off. And people believe Spencer dove into the water to get the boat, leaving Sophia at the lighthouse, and that's why she was making the phone calls. Sophia's family said she wasn't a strong swimmer, and she definitely wouldn't have jumped into the cold, dark water after Spencer,
Yeah.
Are you frustrated, Kate?
Why would you be out there if you can't swim?
That's a good question.
I just don't. You wouldn't be on a sailboat if you can't swim. That's just.
I think she can swim. I don't know if rough, choppy waters on the ocean swim, maybe.
This is frustrating. That's a
I
dumb
do
young
know
thing.
being able to swim is different than being able to swim in open water,
Very different.
You do know, Holly.
Yeah.
You do know.
Yeah.
Our little
Very different.
triathlon survivor. Yeah.
So they also believe Sophia was making those frantic calls. It drained the cell phone battery, leaving Sophia alone at the lighthouse in the dark without any way to leave. So Spencer's phone, which she had, has also never been found.
So how long in between when she was missing did they search the lighthouse?
I think the next day.
Okay. And she was already not there.
Yeah, so I guess when they figured out they're missing and they saw their Snapchats that they were at the lighthouse, the Coast Guard went out.
And she's already gone. Okay.
Already gone. And there's also no reports of people hearing anyone screaming for help. So there are people out in the water, fishermen and stuff, and they aren't too far from shore. If someone was screaming, someone would have heard. No one heard anything. Another thing that is odd is that 2 other local men drowned in the same body of water later that week, and their bodies were found the next day. Sophia's still not found. So this is why people believe Sophia was either taken from the lighthouse or some kind of paranormal entity like Ernie was involved. If you recall, Ernie had committed suicide after his wife had left him for another man. Sophia had recently broken up with Spencer to get back with his ex. And that was the story of the haunted New London Ledge Lighthouse and the missing case of Sophia McKenna.
Ooh, that was
Y'all, please go look up this lighthouse. It is the weirdest looking. You said it's 53 feet tall,
58 feet
or
tall,
something. It's a tiny little baby lighthouse.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if the 58 feet tall is including the block it's on. I think the house is 58 feet tall on top of the block.
I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like there is either she jumped in the water and drowned.
Mm-hmm.
spooky happened or that she was taken. But the problems with the two normal theories is like, I would wait it out, you know? If I couldn't swim and I would be waiting on that island until I had no food, no water, like had nothing left but to jump in the water. And if they came looking for her the next day and she wasn't there, that didn't happen. And then it would be a huge coincidence for her to get kidnapped off of the island in less than 24 hours, you know? So like,
Yeah, that's weird. Also, it's like they have tours there. Even I guess even if it was like a weekend or something like that wasn't going to be a tour the next day, I would think someone would figure out I was there at some point.
yeah.
I would stay put.
I'm wondering, like in my head, you know, I love spooky thoughts, but in my head for this case, I'm wondering if Spencer dove in to get the boat.
Mhm.
He started drowning and she
He tried to
sees
save
that
him.
and she tries to get in and go get him. And then like she done died, you know, but
Yeah, but
the
where's
missing
her
body. Yeah, I
Yeah.
will say the body thing is weird for one to like show up and then the other to not, but it's also it's ocean, you guys. Like we don't
Yeah. There's whole
Sharks.
planes that aren't found.
there's yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole other video.
Yeah. Yeah.
Check us out on our conspiracy theory.
I mean,
No,
is
I'm
there?
just
I don't
kidding.
know, but
Yeah, but no, there's definitely a lot of things that could have happened,
Yeah.
but the body not showing up sucks because that's not really helpful towards any case. But
yeah. Also, when people drown, like when someone's trying to help them, they end up like trying to drown the other person on accident.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, you're
Yes.
grabbing them, yeah.
Yeah.
especially if you're not a good swimmer.
I
Mm-hmm.
think if they drowned in the same spot, the current would take them the same place.
True.
We
Or
have
you
no
get-
answer.
Are there sharks?
Sharks.
Yeah. But they're
I mean,
sharks.
yeah, but why take one body and not the other? Like a feeding fest, you know?
Yeah, and piggy
Ah,
eaters.
I don't know.
It's so bad. Picky eaters.
Piggy
Yeah.
eaters.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kylie. Love and unsolved.
Great.
You know I love them. But of course, I'm gonna say the best for last. Holly has
Oh.
one more spooky story to tell us.
Last spooky story. So yeah, like Kate said in advance, this is a raw episode, and I will for sure be the one to mess up the most because that's how it goes. So be patient. Okay, so mine is a kind of another little spooky structure. It is a haunted hospital. So let's dive in.
Love it. Love it already. Take me
Yes.
there.
So, tucked away in the small town of Vicksburg, Mississippi, stands a huge abandoned hospital called the Coon Memorial State Hospital. It is a huge antebellum style hospital that is now dilapidated and decaying. The building seems to look like the residents of the hospital just suddenly disappeared. Chairs, beds, and equipment look frozen in time where they were once left one day. For over a century, this was a place for poor citizens of Mississippi to receive medical attention. The hospital started in 1832 in response to a smallpox outbreak and was named at this time the Vicksburg City State Hospital. It was a suburban estate with a substantial house in 1847. Not really sure what a substantial house is, but that's what they called it.
Nope.
It was run by Dr. George K. Bachette and later his grandson and great-grandson. It was a large antebellum style building. The hospital was then used during the Civil War to treat injured soldiers, and several wounded died during the Civil War, and several were treated here. The hospital also treated victims of yellow fever. Yellow fever is carried by mosquitoes and occurred mostly during the summer months following the Civil War. The 1878 yellow fever epidemic in the United States was the worst in Mississippi. It devastated Mississippi socially and economically. The whole communities fled their homes. Some towns like Vicksburg became ghost towns, and by the end of the year, 3,227 people roughly had died from the disease here. The state took over the hospital in 1871, and the institution was renamed the State Charity Hospital at Vicksburg. During this time, the hospital was used for many things, including housing for Confederate soldiers. These Confederate soldiers were built a special annex in 1901, and they occupied the halls of this annex for 17 years until 1918, when it mysteriously burned down. Then the University of Mississippi operated its first medical school here in the academic year from 1910 to 1911. Then in 1954, someone left their entire fortune to the hospital, which is odd in itself. A former resident of Vicksburg named Lee Kuhn died and left his estate of $400,000 to the Vicksburg Charity Hospital. Oddly, he also left in his will a memo that directed a 7-person committee to be formed, to be composed of 3 Jews, 2 Catholics, and 2 Protestants, to decide the way to disperse the money for the hospital, which is odd.
We love
I
diversity.
mean, at least they're like, everybody gets opinion, you know?
Yes. A little odd, but yeah. So the committee of these people decided that the new building would be the best use of the money, and in 1959, the institution opened a large new facility, kind of added on to, but also replacing a little bit of the original building, and the institution was renamed in honor of Mr. Kuhn, the Kuhn Memorial State Hospital. Okay, so 1989, due to political and financial issues, the hospital unfortunately closed its doors for good, leaving it vacant. It was vacant for decades, and it just basically started to decay. The vacant hospital began spurring rumors that it was haunted, attracting paranormal investigators from all over. The hospital was even investigated on the TV series Ghost Asylum. Yeah. September 2014, the Mississippi Paranormal Research Institute visited the abandoned hospital and claimed to have captured strange happenings, including the recording of a little girl asking, "Do you want to come play with me?"
No,
No
Yeah.
thanks.
I'm good.
You just close the door. No.
Yep.
Mm-mm.
There were ghost hunters that claimed their K2 meters lit up many times in the hospital, and they actually claimed they were able to successfully communicate with the dead. In June 2015, another group of ghost hunters were searching around the hospital when they noticed an actual trail of blood. The ghost hunters followed the trail. The trail ran all the way through the building and down a flight of stairs and straight outside. The ghost hunters followed the trail all the way until it led them into a wooded area. They continued to follow the blood until at the end of the trail, they found a real-life body.
Oh,
Wait,
wait,
didn't think that was coming.
Yes. So,
a fresh body?
pretty fresh. Yeah.
We love a fresh
fresh.
body.
Yep. Not a mannequin, a body. So, they called the police, obviously, and reported that they had stumbled upon the body of a young woman. Blood appeared to be coming from the wound to from a wound to the woman's head. It appeared that the woman had been dragged down from the 2nd floor in the middle of the building to the grassy area outside. She had been bludgeoned to death and hidden in the bushes. The body was identified by the state crime lab to be the body of 69-year-old Sharon Wilson.
Oh no.
What was Sharon? What year? This was 2015?
Yes. 2015. Yes. So Sharon Wilson had been reported missing the day before the ghost hunters discovered her body. She had been last seen around 9 p.m. on that Saturday night by a couple who visited her home. She was reported missing around noon the next day, on Sunday. Police said that it appeared that there had been some kind of disturbance at Wilson's home. Sharon's car was missing, so it was reported stolen. In the meantime, officers pulled over a 2012 Nissan SUV for reckless driving. When the officers came to the window, he found that there was one male driver and one passenger in the car, and there was blood on the car. The men in the car were identified as cousin Achim McLeod and Raphael McLeod. When the officers ran the plates of the car, it showed that the car had been recently reported stolen and that it belonged to Miss Sharon Wilson. Police checked on Sharon and obviously found out that Sharon, along with her car, had been reported missing, and the two were immediately taken into custody. Raphael was actually on the run at the time. He had escaped from prison. He had been convicted of auto burglary in 2002, grand larceny in 2003, and armed robbery in 2005. He received a suspended sentence on the grand larceny charge and was sentenced to 10 years on the robbery with 4 years to serve and 5 years probation.
So like nothing.
So yeah.
But he's also an escapee.
He escaped, yes.
Oh, okay.
So he's on the run.
Yeah.
So Raphael admitted that he had stalked Sharon for at least one day, watching her house. He was there while she was entertaining her friends, the ones that were the last ones to see her alive. He waited and watched, and it was reported that he also may have known kind of where she lived and the things around her house because he had done yard work for her, possibly. And that night, after all her friends had left, Wilson was alone in her home. Raphael found her spare key and entered her home. He kept Wilson hostage in her home all night until around 5 a.m., when he forced her into her car and drove her to the abandoned Coon Hospital. He said that he took her to this hospital because he believed if people in the area heard a shooting, that they would not call the police. So I assume this is probably in a pretty bad area where if you heard gunshots or somebody screaming, that nobody would really do anything. It is believed that Sharon Wilson was killed in the hospital, and then her body was dragged down the stairs and outside into the woody, grassy area behind the hospital, leaving blood marks down to the woods all over the hospital floor. Raphael was arrested and charged with capital murder, rape, and sexual battery, possession of a weapon as a felon, arson, home invasion, and burglary. He was held in the jail without bond.
Damn. Yeah, he's not getting away with any of that.
Yeah, no. He'd also assaulted her before he killed her, too. So we don't know. I don't think we know if that happened in the hospital or if that was at her home, but
doesn't matter.
That happened as well. Yeah. So as you remember, he was arrested with his nephew, Achim, and he was in the car when Raphael was pulled over. However, Achim was released. Police were able to account for his whereabouts at the time of Sharon's murder and abduction. Achim claims he was only picked up by his uncle Raphael Sunday morning, and his uncle and him were just driving around in Sharon's car, but he had no knowledge of the crime up until that time. So he's not charged. So Raphael is held without bond, and the story continues because March 2nd, 2016, the next year, Raphael escaped from the Warren County Jail.
Again? What is happening?
Yeah, I don't know how he keeps getting out. Yeah.
Oh, he's smart enough to escape twice, but he's not smart enough to ride around in his victim's car.
Yeah.
Or don't kill someone.
That's a good point. Don't do that.
You escape. Let's not murder someone.
Yeah. You got another chance. Go assume a new identity and live a peaceful life. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he does not do that. It was Wednesday around 5:30 a.m. that Raphael used a homemade shank to force a jailer to give him his jail keys, radio, pants, and jacket. McLeod then directed the guard to the bottom floor of the building, and he left through the side door of the jail. This led to a massive 8-day manhunt. Authorities recovered his radio and keys along with orange jail shoes not far from the jail. Raphael was last seen wearing a white t-shirt, the jailer's green pants, and a black jacket. Obviously, the Vicksburg police chief, Walter Armstrong, warned the public that McLeod was extremely, extremely dangerous. 25 officers, the entire sheriff's department, and the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations searched for McLeod for 8 days. The city of Vicksburg and the supervisors offered an additional $7,500 to the $2,500 already offered by the Central Mississippi Crime Stoppers for information leading to McLeod's capture. Tips came in and people reported seeing him in different areas across the city, in Claiborne County, and across the Mississippi River in Madison Parish, Louisiana. Then on March 10th at around 7 a.m., a man was on his way to work. He and his child were out in their garage, starting their car, getting ready to leave for the day, when Raphael McLeod entered the garage from their house.
Oh, who's in the
Yes.
house?
So this is surprising, obviously, to them because he was coming from inside the house already. So he's already broken in, and he had broken into the house from an unlocked door. He ordered the man and the child inside, where the man's wife was still inside of the home. He then tied up the family, held them hostage, and terrorized them before forcing them into their bathroom. The family made 2 911 calls, but the dispatcher of Madison Parish was unable to relay the calls because they did not know where they originated from. Which I'm confused about this because I didn't think that you had to give your address, and I'll tell you why. It's because when my brother and I were little kids, I think I might have like dared him or something. Something happened where Hayden like called 911 and then hung up
They
the
show
phone
up.
and didn't think that anything. They showed up. 2
Mhm.
officers at our door. We were in huge trouble, but never gave our address, just called and hung up.
I guess
What
it
I'm-
depends on what kind of technology the county has.
True.
I was also thinking it potentially, if they called from a cell phone and the cell phone's not obviously registered, like if you're not calling from the house phone that's registered to that address, maybe they
Yeah.
could ping it in enough time. Like cell phone,
Mhm.
what? That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
And they're also in Mississippi.
Yeah.
But this is recent, so it's not.
It's not old.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I looked into it a little bit more, and they said that the reason that they couldn't dispatch officers was a problem with the cell phone provider's equipment that should have sent the call to the Vicksburg but sent it to a different county.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's really I don't know. It's like they're sitting there making 911 calls and no one's coming for help, and they're just tied up in their bathroom.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the
So-
worst.
There was a saving grace for the family, and I'm sure we'll all love this because the family had a dog.
Yes. I knew this was
And-
coming.
Yes. And the dog was extremely scared and anxious. Okay.
As
the
we
dog
all-
ends up pooping in the house.
Okay. All right.
So
It
while the family's tied up in the bathroom, this dog poops in the house. As if this is Raphael's largest problem that he has, he's very upset about this dog poop in the house. It triggers him. And he orders the wife to get up and clean it up. So the wife runs out of the bathroom. She pretends like she's going to go clean up this after this dog. She runs into the bedroom or the bathroom and she grabs a 9mm handgun
Hell yeah.
and she shoots his ass.
What?
Yes. Then she hands the gun to her husband, who shoots Raphael several more times.
Oh.
The husband then runs out of the house and flags down a motorist who calls 911. At 7:16 a.m. that morning, police finally received this 911 call that the family had shot and killed Raphael McLeod. And he was killed in 2016. The murder that occurred in the haunting hospital led to its demolition in February 2019. And that is the story of the body found in the haunted Mississippi hospital.
That one had
I
a-
didn't see this one coming.
A good ending.
What an ending.
Yeah.
Right?
Dang, what a badass wife, man. Like, that's good stuff. She was like, I'm gonna grab the gun and I'm gonna shoot him. And then the husband was like, I'm gonna shoot him some more.
Yep.
Just for the heck of it. Might as
Wow.
well.
Good job, Holly. That was a good one. That was a good one.
Lots of
Uh,
twists and turns.
I don't want to say that I'm sad the hospital isn't there because it's probably a good thing it's demolished. But if you look at the pictures, holy moly,
It's creepy.
Creepy.
Yeah.
gnarly. Yeah.
Well, and an article I read also said that they wanted to rebuild another charity hospital in its place. So, I mean,
Ooh, on the
might
same
be
property.
haunted as well. I don't know.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, it's gonna be, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all gonna be haunted.
That was good
Yes.
stuff, ladies.
Lots of twists and turns on that one. I loved it because it just like I kept researching it and it kept getting crazier.
I'm confused as to why he went from like stealing cars to murder and hostage.
I know.
Seems like a jump.
Crazy.
A lot of stuff going on.
Very.
Going on. Are we ready for some little ghost stories?
Yes, 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 yes.
Kate, do you want to introduce our little special guest?
Yeah. So, as you listeners know, we often do a segment called Overtime at the end. We'll do personal stories or local crime, stuff like that, updates. But this time we're going to do a little overtime of ghost stories or haunted stories from our experiences in life. And, it's only taken a year and a half for you guys to finally see the face to the name that we have said so many a times. So, as my story for this week's ghost story, I'm actually going to be bringing on my husband, Cameron, as our special guest. So, if you guys give a little
Cameron.
round of applause for Cameron. Come on over, Cam. Say hi.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, no.
No, Kate's gone.
There we go.
I think you guys gotta like stick together.
Yeah,
Be attached.
So this week, Cameron is actually decided, well, he was asked and he graciously said yes. Here, come on over. You got to be in front of the mic too. That he's going to tell a little story from when he was growing up. And then he actually has something in common with Kylie. So Cameron, tell us about your childhood.
From the beginning.
Well, yeah, from the beginning. So May 11th, 19. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, this mainly happened. I don't remember it. I was like 2 years old, so this isn't exactly like physically me experiencing this, but my family grew up in like the house that I grew up in was very interesting, and it was interesting enough to a point where some things happened. So pretty much from day one, okay, there we go.
We're just gonna do that for now.
That's good.
From day one of moving in, my sister, and they moved in when my sister was, I think, 9 or 10. She's 10 years older than me, so she was 10, and she picked her room out or whatever. It was like a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, or no, 3-bedroom, 2 bath. So she picked her room.
Detail.
Yeah, it is. So she picked a room, and from there she was like grown up in it. Well, when she was about 11 years old, I was just born, I was 1. She started seeing, or not seeing, but she started feeling something in the room, and specifically she started feeling like someone else was in there. She did say that she felt like another person was in there. So she told my parents this, and they kind of just blew it off as like an 11-year-old who is just like scared of something. Either she saw a movie or something. So they were like, yeah, okay, like it's okay. They got her nightlights, they got her all sorts of stuff. Well, like a year later, my parents would like wake up and come out into the living room from their bedroom, and my sister would be on the couch, and they'd be like, what's going on? And she's like, I don't want to sleep in my room. And they're like, why? And they're like, she kept saying like, there's like something going on in there. And she's 11. She's like, something's going on in my room. And they were like, okay. And after a couple of weeks of this, they're like, all right, this is getting a little weird. And then they asked her like, what are you experiencing in your room? What's the thing that's making you scared? And she said she felt, when she was in her bed, she felt someone sit on the edge of her bed and then blow in her face.
Ooh.
So it'd feel like someone sat next to her and went like, and like blew in her face, and would like wake her up. And she said it continuously, she'd feel this. So after I'd say about 3 weeks of her sleeping on the couch, my mom and my dad were like, we got to do something about this. Like something's going on in this room. And and in her closet, she had a shoe rack, and it wasn't like a fancy shoe rack, but it was a nice shoe rack. It fell one time, so my dad like put extra screws in it, made it a little tougher, and it just kept falling. And that was like something that was weird in her closet. So fast forward like a month after this, and my parents like, we got to do something. Like, she's not sleeping in her room, what are we gonna do? And at the time, my mom was like, she's still religious, but she was definitely a little bit more religious. So she called a priest. The priest came out and blessed the whole house, specifically that room. And from then on, she kind of was like, okay to sleep in there. so then time passes or whatever. She gets older, and then she moves out. And me being the little sibling, that was a bigger room. I was like, I want to take that room. So I do. I'm like 11 years old. She's out of the house. So I'm in that room and I start feeling weird things in this room. Like the closet area makes noises. The closet was a sliding glass mirror.
Yeah.
So there's 3 doors, and like if you wanted to open it, you had to scoot it all the way over and like find a gap so it was like that. So I just remember hearing things in that closet. There were like pipes and stuff behind the walls there that like went to the garage and the kitchen, but I don't know. It was always just like weird, especially at night. But specifically, I remember I was 11 years old, and the way my bed was facing, you can look into the living room from my bed. And I remember laying in bed. It was probably late. It was like, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock, which was like late when I was 11. My parents were already in bed, and I just remember like I couldn't fall asleep. I remember I didn't fall asleep yet, so I was just like laying in bed, tossing and turning, and I started to like get cold and stuff, and I looked out into the living room, and this is when I saw like smoke rolling in, and this is like the first and only time I've ever had sleep paralysis, which is have you guys had sleep paralysis?
No, thank God.
I have one time actually.
It's like a horror movie. It's literally horrific.
Well, I had it, and I remember sitting there frozen in fear, like what is going on. I like sat up, but I couldn't really move, but I can like move my head. So I sat up, and I was looking in the living room, and it was dark, and like smoke started rolling in, or fog, or whatever you want to call it. And I swear to God, like a figure, I couldn't make out details, but I saw like a silhouette of like a guy on like a horse or something come into the living room, and like he like slowly came in the living room, and he like his shoulders like turned towards me, and right there I was screaming, but I couldn't make a noise, but I was screaming for my parents. And this is like a vivid memory. Like I to this day it freaks me out, but I was screaming for my mom and dad, couldn't make a noise, but like in my head I'm trying to scream, and it like turns towards me. I couldn't really make out a head, so I don't know if he had a head or not. But he like turned towards me, and then he went through our sliding glass door through our living room, which is like out to the backyard. He like went through it, disappeared, and then like I just kind of laid back down. I laid there for another like 2 hours. Like, was that a dream? Was that real? I don't remember falling asleep because I got back up once that was done, and I went to my parents' room, and I was like, I'm sleeping in here. Like, I need you guys to scoot the hell over because
And you were also 11 when this occurred, which is the same age as Michelle when she was in the house and stuff happened to her.
Yeah, and I just remember thinking like something is in this freaking house. So for like the next week or so, I definitely slept with my parents, and they were like, we got to figure out what the hell's going on. And then
You get a second priest?
No,
we never got
a right.
Yeah, we had crosses everywhere, so we had a cross in between. So like the room she was in was here, a bathroom was in between us, and then my other room was there, or like the other bedroom. So we had a cross, split the 2 rooms, and then there was a cross above my sister's bed that she left when she moved out, so it was above my bed. There were crosses everywhere. It was freaking weird. Yeah. And it was a really old house on a really weird area of land in Florida. It was like known for like Indians and Native Americans.
It's probably one of those. You stole their land.
I know. The neighborhood was called, I don't want to like dox the neighborhood, but it was like
it's okay.
You don't live there, right?
Yeah. I don't live there anymore. Yeah. It was called Indian Creek. That was the name of the neighborhood. So.
And I went to this house only once, I think, before your family sold it.
Yeah.
At the beginning of our relationship. And I remember that cross because I remember saying something because I was like, Cameron, so the cross was just off just a little bit, you know, like when it's not straight and you're like, just move that picture kind of thing. It's just a little crooked. And Cameron and Michelle always say, like his sister Michelle always say, yeah, like it was just always.
It was a weird house. Yeah, it was old weird.
Yeah.
Wait, did you know about like the ghost with Michelle, or were you too young, or did you like find out later?
I found out later.
I found out when I was like 16.
Oh, so you had no idea when all that happened. Oh,
yeah. I mean, I never came up when I was little, and then when it started happening, my dad was like, "This happened once before," and I was like, "What the hell? You didn't tell me this."
Yeah,
kept a big secret.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's more believable though that you didn't know about your sister's experience, you know?
No, I didn't. Yeah,
that you didn't just make it up. Not like that you made it up on here, but I mean, like in your head as a kid.
Right. Yeah, it's not like thinking like, oh, this was exactly what happened. So yeah, no, it was weird. And I've never had sleep paralysis after that. I've never had it. That was the one and
Yeah.
only time I've ever had it. And it was like, when people talk about it, I'm like, I know what it feels like. It's scary as hell.
Mhm.
And like also Cameron is like, for all the listeners, because the girls know this, like Cameron is he loves us, he loves that we do crime stuff like that, but like I wouldn't say you're like into ghosts and shit. Like you're kind of like, you have to believe it to see it kind of thing. Kind of the same with like you, Holly. Like he's on the
Yeah.
same level as you. And so I remember hearing this story when I first met Cameron, and like if you guys are watching, you'll see me giggle throughout the whole story because it's just so funny that like, of all people, this is Cameron telling this story. You
Yeah.
know, like it's just his one and done. That was your one story.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't experienced anything else since then, and like,
Yeah.
and
Fingers
that was the
crossed. Yeah.
yeah, fingers crossed. But that was the one and only time I truly felt that like something else other than the house, like something was in that house.
Yeah.
It was very weird.
So that's Cameron's story for today. Now, Kylie does have something that him and her were both related with, but as you listeners all know, my husband loves to golf, and he actually has a tee time in 5 minutes. So we're gonna let him bounce out for the day. So everybody say bye to Cam, and
Goodbye,
I'll film
Cam.
for his spot with Kylie's story. So
Okay.
say bye. Love
Bye.
ya.
Bye. Our first guest.
So yay, Cameron finally made an appearance.
He did good.
Yeah, he did good. He did good.
He did
So-
good. Yeah.
But that story, I will say, like, I mean, you guys know Cam. He's not like, oh, I love spooky stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just remember him being like, it was a headless man on a horse. And I was like, was it? Like, what do you mean?
That's funny. I've had sleep paralysis before one time, and it's no joke. Like, it's actually freaky.
Thank God I've never had it. So that sounds terrifying. And for those, because I don't think we really explained it, but like if you don't know what sleep paralysis is like you're awake, but you can't move or breathe or talk. You can breathe, but you're trying to move and you can't, but you're wide awake and fully aware.
Yeah. It's, I think I've heard it, and I may butcher this, but I have heard before that it is when your circadian rhythms get off. Like there's a scientific reason behind it.
Look at you.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally be wrong about that, but I think I've heard that before, that it has something to do with like your brain when you're sleeping and it getting like confused on if you're awake or asleep, and that's why you feel like you're awake, but your body's telling you you're asleep.
And do you guys know a famous person that has had multiple sleep paralysis episodes before?
You?
Our favorite, Kim Kardashian.
Oh.
Yes, she's like open about it. She's had multiple sleep paralysis like things.
Like her
That's-
brain's very busy, so that
Just a
makes
fun
sense.
fact. Right, yeah.
That's why I haven't had it, because there's nothing going on.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just looked it up. It says sleep paralysis is a temporary loss of muscle control just after falling asleep or before waking up. It frequently involves hallucinations or feelings of suffocation. No one knows exactly why or exactly what causes sleep paralysis, but it is linked to sleep disorders and medical conditions.
That's a no for me, dog.
Nope.
Mm-mm.
Only
No
happened
thanks.
one time, but
Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting. It's very like creepy
Yeah.
for sure.
So, Kylie, do you want to tell your Florida story?
Yeah, it's not as juicy as Cam's or as
Yeah.
detailed, but
Yeah.
this was like the moment that made me believe in ghosts. Because before I was like, I mean, it would be cool if ghosts are real, but I'd never seen one, obviously.
Mm.
So I think I was in like middle school or something. My dad took me up to St. Augustine. You know, I think we talked about it before. Like the oldest
Beautiful.
city in America,
Love
beautiful,
it.
but very haunted. And of course we did like the night ghost tour. We're on the little trolley like around town. And they take us by the lighthouse. And there is like a little playground at the base of the lighthouse, kind of weird, like a little park. We're on the trolley and it's summer, there's no wind. It's kind of like foggy, whatever. In one swing, when we like start going near it, just goes boop, 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 and then just dead stopped. Like didn't come slowly to a stop, just stopped. And I was like, okay, let's get off the trolley.
Yeah, I'd be like, faster, faster.
Let's go back to the hotel. I'm done.
Yeah. Mhm.
But when I met Kate and Cam in Little Rock and I was talking about it, Cam, the exact same thing happened to Cam on the same tour years before.
Yeah, same location, Holly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, because I remember Cameron was like, wait, my sister and I were in St. Augustine, same, like, and they vividly remember a swing like going and it just dead stopped. Of course, in my head, I'm like, is there a mechanics that's supposed to do this? You know, kind of thing.
I don't know. It's like a park open to the public.
It is, yeah. So like, it's
Yeah.
not a park. It's
Yeah.
not like part of the tour, you know?
No.
Yeah.
That would
Holly,
be
we got to
kinda
get you to St. Augustine though. It's beautiful. You'd love
I
it.
know. I've had.
ghost
I'm a ghost skeptic. You know, like
Which is
I'm
fine.
open to it. I like the idea of it, the spookiness. You know, but I just haven't had an experience. I'm not popular with the ghost community, if you will.
We got to get you somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can find some.
Did I can't remember if I did it on the podcast or not because I don't want to repeat it, but did I tell you guys about the ghost tour on the USS in Charleston
Oh yeah.
that Cam and I went to? Holly, do you remember
Yes.
this?
Yes. Yes.
But did I
was
so
great.
okay, I remember telling that story, but like did I tell you guys about the dog at the end? That like the part of the tour at the end, the guide was like, oh yeah, and then there's a ghost of Scrappy the dog. But
Oh
it
yes.
turns out
Yes.
Scrappy didn't even die on the boat. See, it's stuff like that, Holly, where I'm like, Cam and I are like, Scrappy, come here, Scrappy. Like, we want to see a dead
Yeah.
dog ghost, you know, kind of thing. And then at the very end, the guy was like, yeah, but he died like in the Philippines, like had a long life, 17 years. And we're like,
Like, oh.
he's not on the ship.
How did he get to Charleston?
How did he get to Charles? Like, why is he haunting this ship? That makes no sense. So
That's great.
some of it you just have to like, I get it.
Yeah.
People are usually skeptics until you see something yourself.
Mhm.
Or go through an event, or I mean just a lot of true crime. Like there's a show that the three of us all watch called Unsolved Mysteries that comes out on Netflix, and there's a few episodes. I think they have like 4 seasons or whatever it is now, but there's a few episodes for you listeners that have made us all think about some things that we're like, okay, this doesn't make any sense.
They always make me think and are like, okay, that couldn't be a coincidence, but I have that block where I'm like, if I can't see it or experience it, you know?
Yeah.
Something I always think about is that like coincidences, but if it happens to if the same coincidence happens to multiple people who are not related like in any type of way, then I'm like, wait, I don't understand how that's possible, you know, like same group. Or not to get into UFOs, but one of the Unsolved Mysteries was about UFOs, and it was like a whole effing town like saw something and was reporting it, and it like none of these people knew each other, and they didn't know anybody had called the cops until like the next day, you know? So like stuff like that, it makes me think. Yeah, so I get it, but I assume, Holly, you don't have any ghost stories then.
No, I don't.
I say next Halloween special, we take Holly on a ghost tour.
We'll do it live.
And we'll live stream it. Yeah.
We'll live stream it. Yeah.
Holly's revelation.
We'll take the GoPro. We'll put it on Holly's head, like the hat thing, so you just see her face and reaction, like walking around like at a ghost. Like
Yeah.
Yes. That'll be good. There's a lot of places we could take you, but yeah, you got to experience something. So
we'll just keep doing it until you see a ghost.
Yeah. Why don't we just lock her in a sane asylum? Like, let's just and let her experience it for herself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
we can arrange that.
Yeah. But let's see. So Halloween, you guys doing anything crazy tonight?
Tonight, I'm actually going to see the Taylor Swift movie at the drive-in theater.
That's so cute.
You have a drive-in theater?
Yeah, and I haven't been yet, and I've been scared to go watch it because on TikTok, like everyone's like up singing and dancing. I'm like, I want to like watch it. At least I can like lock my car.
Yeah. Now, when you do a drive-in theater, does it play through the radio station?
Yeah, there's a radio station instead of like the speaker.
So you can like roll your windows up if people start singing and dancing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure there will still be some. But I don't think many kids will be there on Halloween, so that's why I picked it.
Oh, that's true. That's really smart, actually.
No.
Yeah. So my neighborhood, Cam and I's neighborhood here in Jupiter, goes hard for holidays. Kylie got to see that over the weekend when she came down, and every house like has decorations. And this is the first year that we're gonna be here in this neighborhood for Halloween, because last year we were
You got
getting
married.
We were
Yeah.
getting married.
Yeah.
On Halloween weekend, but last year I put out a bowl of candy and I came back and there was still a bowl of candy. So I had my suspicions. I was like, what happened? But this year, a few days ago, I messaged on our neighborhood Facebook page, and I was like, hey, is Halloween, like, are the kids gonna be out on Tuesday? Like, is it like the Sunday before? And we had like 15 people comment, and they were like, get ready, the kids are like, it's a madhouse, it's amazing. And I didn't want to like be the one to be like, well, no one came to my house last year, so
Yeah.
but I hope they come. I'm ready, the dogs are ready, it's gonna be a good time. I was thinking about putting out a table outside so that people don't ring the doorbell for the dogs,
Oh, that's
but
kind of,
maybe doing that instead of just chilling outside, because then people will see me that I have candy. I
Yeah.
love trick-or-treaters, so I'm
Aw.
excited.
I love it.
Are you
Yeah.
and Cam gonna dress up?
I'll probably dress up just because it's me. Cam will probably be upstairs playing video games.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I'll keep the dogs with him as much as maybe I'll bring like Nora out with me, because Nora and Finley are very people and kid friendly, but like Finley gets really overwhelmed, so maybe I'll put Nora in one of her costumes and bring her outside with me.
Love it.
Yeah, I'll take pictures if I do, but very excited. Love trick-or-treaters. Halloween's one of my favorite times of the year.
Kate usually throws a banger of a Halloween party every year.
I do. This year, I was not allowed to throw my own banger. So Cam and I, we've been only married for a year, but we've been together 8 years almost. And every year we always do a Halloween party. That's like our thing, that and like Polish Christmas kind of stuff. And this year, because I am 8.5 months pregnant as we speak, Cameron was like, I don't want to throw the party. Like, it's going to be way too much on you. So what we did
Understandable.
instead is one of my local girlfriends, shout out Alex Mustapik and her husband, Dave. They were like, hey, we'll throw the party at our house, but you can also do whatever you want. So I got to throw a Halloween party at somebody else's house, and it was
Perfect.
great. And we'll have to upload our costumes to social media, because it
Tell
was
the listeners what you guys were.
So Kylie came down to Jupiter, and
We'll insert a picture.
we'll insert a picture right here.
Oh God, I don't want this up on the internet forever.
no.
It's gonna
We'll post
absolutely
it
be on the
in
internet.
It is.
So Cameron, Kylie, and I dressed up as the Blue Man Group, and it was, excuse me, but so fucking good. Like, it was absolutely hilarious. Get ready to see the picture. We're big into costumes every year, and we try to do something like people don't think. So this was a good one. Kylie joined in on the costume this year, and it was
Great.
fucking hilarious.
People were
So great.
definitely surprised.
They were absolutely, because I will say, I am also, like I said, I'm 8.5 months pregnant. So when you think of a Halloween costume for a pregnant lady, you're like, oh, she's gonna paint her tummy a pumpkin, or something like that. And boom, we showed up as the Blue Man Group. Tummy wasn't included in the costume, which makes it even better. Like, it was great. It was great. So next year we already have an idea. We're not going to say it though, but we already have an idea. We'll tell you later, Holly, if you want to
Okay.
join in on it. So
Oh, there's room for Holly to join this one.
there is, because this is technically a 4-person costume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so that's it.
Perfect.
Wait, what are your Halloween plans, Holly?
I don't really have any right now.
Boo.
You need to find something. Go find a
I know.
ghost.
Go out. Go. What is it? Tuesday night? Go to a little bar or something.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably do something on Tuesday night. We were gonna do there's a little Harvest Fest downtown, but it's storming right now in Little Rock, and
Oh,
so it's rained out. We were thinking about doing that later on.
Well, just if you guys don't do anything, just for shits and giggles, put the dogs in some costumes.
Oh yeah,
Take some pics for us. Holly has 2 wiener dogs. They're the best things we've ever seen. So
little
just-
weens.
those are like the
Halloween.
best dogs for costumes.
Oh, for
Yes.
sure.
yeah, and they accept their fate. So
Yes.
Hey, are you guys ready to wrap this up?
This was a good one, you guys.
This was so fun. Y'all will have to go on YouTube and watch our first little Halloween special episode. And if it's a hit, then we'll keep doing videos because this is kind of fun.
And if it's not, we'll still do the videos
We'll still do the
because we're
videos.
trying
Show
our
our
best, you
fucking
guys.
faces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also no editing, so that helps us out a lot.
Yeah. Good. A little snaps for us for getting through a whole episode with no edits, you know?
Look at us, Scott. We're growing.
Yeah.
We hope you have enjoyed our Halloween special, and we hope you all have a very scary but also happy Halloween. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.